drank that much Pepsi, then he probably should.
Maybe he is goofy, but
Points, Harrier jet, you saw it.
It's clearly a joke.
This was for 10 cents each.
I did the quick math. I go, 7 million,
I've loved flying from the very first time I had a chance to climb into a military airplane.
How it all started. In the mid-1990s, Pepsi was facing off stiff competition from Coca-Cola and sought to attract a younger audience. To do this, they came up with a promotional campaign called Pepsi Stuff in March 1996, which allowed customers to accrue Pepsi points that could be redeemed for items such as t-shirts and leather jackets. The points could be earned by purchasing Pepsi products, with labels attached to the boxes of these products. This campaign was the largest in Pepsi's history and was accompanied by a series of television commercials to advertise it. One of the commercials showcased a computer-generated Pepsi-branded AV-8 Harrier II, which is a Harrier jet manufactured by McDonnell Douglas. The commercial offered the jet for 7 million Pepsi points, which caught the attention of John Leonard, a 21-year-old business student. Leonard noticed that the promotion allowed Pepsi points to be directly purchased for 10 cents per point, a detail that he used to his advantage. Leonard convinced 5 investors to lend him a total of $700,000, and he sent a check for $700,008.50 to Pepsi. He also included 15 labels per the promotion rules. However, Pepsi refused the offer, stating that the promotion of the Harrier jet in the commercial was fanciful and that its intention was to create a humorous and entertaining ad. The Pepsi Stuff campaign was a huge success for Pepsi, as it helped to increase sales and attract a younger audience. The campaign's popularity was due to the fact that it offered consumers the chance to earn rewards for something they were already buying. By simply purchasing Pepsi products, consumers could accrue points that could be redeemed for a range of items. The commercial featured the Harrier jet was a stroke of marketing genius, as it caught the attention of many consumers and generated a lot of buzz. The fact that it was a computer-generated image of a jet made it even more appealing to consumers, as it added an element of novelty and excitement to the promotion. John Leonard's attempt to redeem his Pepsi points for the Harrier jet was an interesting twist in the story. Leonard had noticed a loophole in the promotion, which allowed him to purchase the points directly. He then used this to his advantage and convinced investors to lend him money to purchase the required number of points. Pepsi's refusal to honor Leonard's request was understandable, as the promotion was clearly intended to be a marketing gimmick and not a serious offer. However, it did lead to a legal dispute between Leonard and Pepsi, which was eventually settled out of court. Overall, the Pepsi Stuff campaign was a huge success for Pepsi, and it helped to solidify the company's position as a major player in the soft drink market. The promotion was a clever way to incentivize consumers to purchase Pepsi products, and the commercial featuring the Harrier jet was a stroke of marketing genius that generated a lot of buzz and attention. The legal dispute between John Leonard added an interesting twist to the story.
Now, the more Pepsi you drink, the more great stuff you're going to...
If he drank that much Pepsi, then he probably should.
maybe he is goofy, but
decided to take legal action.
But Pepsi went to court first, asking that Leonard's claim be... Executive David Verkland.
I have a guy here who's done something pretty clever. I would give him a...
The procedures that followed. After Pepsi refused to honor John Leonard's attempt to redeem his Pepsi points for the Harrier jet, he filed a lawsuit against PepsiCo. The lawsuit alleged both breach of contract and fraud. Initially brought in Florida, the case was eventually heard in New York. During the legal proceedings, Leonard made several unusual claims. For example, he argued that a federal judge was incapable of deciding on the matter and that the decision had to be made by a jury consisting of members of the Pepsi generation. He claimed that the advertisement constituted an offer that was binding under contract law. However, the court rejected these arguments and ruled in favor of PepsiCo. The court held that the commercial was not a serious offer, but instead was a fanciful and hyperbolic advertisement. The court also noted that the terms and conditions of the promotion were clearly laid out, and that Pepsi had the right to reject any redemption request it deemed inappropriate. Ultimately, the court granted PepsiCo's motion for summary judgment pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 56. The court ruled that Leonard failed to present evidence to support his claim that Pepsi breached its contract with him. Furthermore, the court held that Leonard's fraud claim was without merit because he failed to demonstrate that Pepsi made any misrepresentations or engaged in any deceptive conduct. While the commercial featuring the Harrier jet was a stroke of marketing genius, it was not intended to be a serious offer. The court's ruling emphasized the importance of distinguishing between advertisements and binding offers in contract law.
Decided to take legal action.
But Pepsi went to court first, asking that Leonard's claim be
Now, the more
prizes like T-shirts and sunglasses, or for 7 million points, some fine print. In place of labels, consumers could buy Pepsi points.
For advertising, the case limped through the courts for 3 years, while the court of public opinion was
For 10 cents each.
I did the quick math. I go, 7 million,
Introducing a whole new way to look at Pepsi and Diet Pepsi.
is me.
Someone who's taking advantage of the legal system doesn't really typify the Pepsi generation.
Points, Harrier jet, you saw it.
It's clearly a joke.
This was tour across the country in a Harrier jet. I'd turn it into a TV commercial.
After about 3 or 4 years in the squadron and making deployments all over the world, I went to an air show. I saw the airplanes and I got the bug again. It was just amazing what the airplane could do compared to the other airplanes I had been flying with.
Judgment. Following the lawsuit filed by John Leonard against PepsiCo, the case was heard by Judge Kimba Wood in New York. Leonard's claims of breach of contract and fraud were rejected by the court, and recovery was denied on several grounds. Firstly, the court held that the advertisement featuring the Harrier jet did not constitute a valid offer under the restatement second of contracts. The court found that no reasonable person could have believed that PepsiCo seriously intended to convey a jet worth roughly $37.4 million for just $700,000. The court stated that the commercial was mere puffery and not a serious offer. Secondly, the value of the alleged contract meant that it fell under the provisions of the statute of frauds, which required a written agreement between the parties. As no such agreement existed, the court held that a contract had not been formed. In justifying its conclusion that the commercial was evidently done in jest, the court made several observations regarding the nature of the content of the commercial. For example, the court noted that the commercial featured a highly improbable pilot who could barely be trusted with the keys to his parents' car, much less a fighter jet. Additionally, the court pointed out that no school would provide landing space for a student's fighter jet, nor would any school condone the disruption that the jet's use would cause. The court also highlighted the Harrier jet's well-documented function in attacking and destroying surface and air targets, as well as offensive and defensive anti-aircraft warfare. Depicting such a jet as a way to get to school in the morning was clearly not serious, even if the jet was capable of being acquired in a form that eliminates its potential for military use. Despite these findings, John Leonard appealed the decision to the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. However, the court issued a brief per curiam opinion affirming the lower court's decision for substantially the same reasons stated by Judge Wood in her opinion. The case underscores the significance of the statute of frauds in contract law, which requires certain types of contracts to be in writing. In this case, the value of the alleged contract fell under the provisions of the statute of frauds, but no written agreement existed between the parties. Finally, the case also sheds light on the role of the courts in interpreting and applying contract law. The courts play a crucial role in ensuring that contracts are fair, enforceable, and in compliance with legal requirements. In this case, the court's decision to reject Leonard's claims and deny recovery was based on a careful analysis of the facts and legal principles involved. The legal dispute between John Leonard and PepsiCo over the Harrier jet promotion was a fascinating case that raised important questions about contract law, advertising, and the role of the courts in resolving disputes. While Leonard's attempt to redeem his Pepsi points for a fighter jet ultimately failed, the case is an interesting data point for the importance of clear communication, legal requirements, and the role of the courts in ensuring fairness and justice in contract disputes.
Over the issue in order to jet in the ad from 7 million Pepsi points to 700 million Pepsi points. Acquired 7 million Pepsi points, you could exchange them for a Harrier jet. The court that actually had power to issue a ruling. The promotion was a roaring success and resulted in nothing of note happening whatsoever. Upon seeing the commercial, Leonard, a 21-year-old business student, the following words then appear: Harrier fighter, 7 million Pepsi points. This meant that even if every 2-liter bottle of Pepsi only awarded a single point, while no Harrier jet was listed there, he did notice it stated in the small print that if a person already had 15 Pepsi points.
I've loved flying from the very first time I had a chance to climb into a military airplane.
It would cost $4.3 million.
It's a check for $700,000 for the Harrier jet.
What?
Why?
7 million went on the offense.
It was in no way an admission that we had done anything wrong. It was an admission.
What happened afterwards? Despite Leonard's failed legal challenge against Pepsi, the controversy surrounding the Pepsi Harrier jet promotion continued to generate public interest. Pepsi continued to air the commercial, but it updated the cost of the Harrier jet to 700 million Pepsi points and added a clarifying "just kidding" disclaimer. This was an apparent attempt by Pepsi to clarify that the commercial was a humorous exaggeration and not a genuine offer. However, some critics felt that the disclaimer was an inadequate response to the controversy. In the aftermath of the failed lawsuit, Leonard's reputation suffered, and he faced criticism from those who saw him as a naive college student who had made an ill-conceived attempt to exploit a promotional offer. Despite this, Leonard remained a vocal critic of Pepsi, arguing that the company had deceived consumers with its advertising and promotional tactics. The Pentagon's statement that the Harrier jet would not be sold to civilians without demilitarization highlighted the absurdity of the commercial's premise. The Harrier jet was a sophisticated military aircraft that could not be safely operated by civilians without extensive training and technical expertise. The release of the docuseries titled Pepsi Where's My Jet in November 2022, more than 25 years after the original controversy. The docuseries explores the background and aftermath of the legal challenge, as well as the broader cultural context in which the promotion took place. It features interviews with Leonard and other key figures involved in the case, as well as archival footage and commentary from cultural critics and legal experts.
But they still had to deal with Leonard, who sued Pepsi for fraud, breach of contract, and deceptive.
We do it, so we worked the deal, wrote a one-page contract in Sharpie because we only had one piece of paper.
This commercial comes on Harrier jet, 7 million Pepsi points.
Have well-off investors sent Pepsi 15 labels and a check and waited.
Introducing the new Pepsi Stuff catalog.
Adding, who replied to Leonard stating that the offer was clearly a joke.
That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.